Welcome to the GrowCast show. My name is Yu Hong and I'll be your host for today. And today in our studio, we have Laks, specialist in helping people with right-sizing their homes. Let's get to our questions. What does going beyond the usual property agent really mean for you personally?
For me, it's not about buying or selling. What's important is actually for us as agents is to understand what our client wants. Okay, to me, I believe that sometimes some clients want the moon and the stars. Sometimes it's difficult for us to explain to them. But what is important is that we understand what is their current situation and how we can help them and advise them, because every property is different and every customer is different. Because property is actually one of the biggest financial decisions in anybody's life. Okay, especially in Singapore where the prices are high and property market is something which is a commitment for 25 years to 30 years. So when making this decision, what's important is as buyers, they need to know what are they getting themselves into, and they need to understand A to Z of what is required for the loan process to happen, for the application to purchase the house. They also need to understand whether they can hold the house. Yes, some buyers do it for the home. They believe that this is going to be a dream house. This is where they are going to stay and build a family together. There are also some buyers who use it as an investment. But those guys who are investing, they need to understand whether are they able to hold. There's a waiting period. There is a minimum holding period for them to, before they appreciate and sell. So there's a lot of factors coming into when it comes to property. So whether it's investment or homestay, at least they need to understand what is the end goal for them. Sometimes as buyers, they don't see this end goal unless it's been displayed to them and advise or talk to them. That's when we as agent come in so that they have some kind of light to understand which direction they want to head to, because every client and every house is different. So to cater for them specifically, it's good that they have someone who can actually discuss these options with them.
What truly separates a good agent from an average one in Singapore?
From my opinion, the average agent is buy, sell, repeat. So what they want is, they want to find client who wants to sell. They want to join them with a client which wants to buy, and they match them up whether or not, does it make sense. To them, that portion doesn't matter. They just want to make the sale, earn the commission, and move ahead. This is how average agents are. And that's what they're paid to do. As a commissioner, that's what you want to do. Then there are good agents. There are agents who understand what the client needs are. They understand what future planning is for the client. They understand how can they advise better for the clients, so that this is not just a one-time sale. It's a 5 years, 10 years, future asset progression planning for them. There are also clients who need to right size. It's time to, leave their home, which they have been staying for the past 20 years or 10 years, and, right size to a better property for them at this age so that they can retire comfortably. So there's always something which the client wants, but we need to see what the client needs. And what we do, as agent or a good agent, is to understand what he wants and what he needs, and to see what's the best balance between them.
You mentioned you started with a very Kiasu mindset. How did that shape the way you approach property today?
Singaporeans are labeled as Kiasu most of the time, but that also need to show us in our actions. Being Kiasu is not just being scared to make decisions. It's more of trying to understand whether this decision will it help you in the future. So being Kiasu means to know everything before you take the first step ahead. It's a good thing. It can also be a bad thing, but most of the time it helps you to understand where are you stepping onto. So for me, how it shaped me was mainly because I was planning for my own asset progression. I was in a very comfortable HDB and thinking that want to take a step to private and right sizing my house to make it something which is smaller, but progressing in asset value was a very tough decision for me. I decided to look at it and think about it every single day until I realized that, it's still possible. I think being Kiasu just helps you to confirm your decision sometimes, and it helps you to decide whether this is the right decision for you and your family. So being Kiasu means if you know that if the worst case scenario is still survivable and it's possible to carry on, then everything else will be better than the worst.
So Laks, Why did you choose real estate and what makes your approach different from others?
Okay, I came into real estate mainly because I wanted to upgrade myself. So, as being the Kiasu guy I decided to do the course to learn about what's the best decision to make when it comes to property. But when going through the course itself, I realized that there's a lot of information as buyers we are not much aware of, and that made me realize that this is something which I want to share to others, and I want them to also know before they make a serious decision in their life. I mean, it's a 30 years decision which they need to make. And moving ahead, for me, the approach is to share light, to let people know any property decisions they are making is calculated based on what they want, also what they need, and to see how this can help them in their future when they retire. Or if for those elderlies who are retiring, is to right size, to at least see how they can enjoy the perks of their hard work over the years to retire and be happy in their golden years.
Was there a defining moment that changed how you advise clients on property decisions?
Yes, for me it was during the course itself when I realized that, as mentioned, there's a lot of things as buyers are not made aware of or not told. So for me being the buyer himself, I realized that it's something which I need to let others know because I would have wanted the same for them to let me know. So as being an agent, the whole purpose of this is to let buyers know what they are missing out in the sense of information and how I can better help them or give them the appropriate advice, because this is something which they need to know before making any decisions. So I feel that this portion is what changed the whole understanding, or for me to wanting to do the exam to be an estate agent myself.
Is 2026 actually a good time to buy property, or is this question actually a wrong question?
Actually, this is a wrong question because every year is different. It doesn't matter any difference from 2025, 2026. Except the price, the inflation and the fluctuation of price. So what is the right question is whether are we ready to buy this property with this price. So that's when you make decisions based on your financial situation. You make decisions based on your current property asset appreciation. You make decisions on what is your next 5 years going to look like, with your job, with maybe your business, whether is it going to be better, or at least you need to have that Kiasu mentality to know what is the worst can happen and see whether this is the decision you can make for yourself and your family. So if you ask me this question, every year is the same. It doesn't matter whether it's 2025 or 2026. What matters is whether do you have the right planning now, or have you start planning now for the future. So there's only this.
Will property prices in Singapore always go up? What's the real truth?
People say that it always goes up. Generally, yes. That 10 years ago, 5-room HDB, and now definitely the price has appreciated, regardless of whatever the location or wherever the location is. On a general basis, yes. But the real question is, how much does it go up? There are certain places where there is in an infrastructure stage, or if it's a complete mature state, then price is more stagnant, more stable. Yes, it does still go up because as a whole, Singapore, all the property prices go up. But there are also certain places where it means if you enter in at the wrong time, when it's the buyer's peak, then you might enter in a very high price, but actually the price of that property or during that time might not be exactly the same pricing. Yeah, so what matters is the entry price and also how long can you hold and what is the infrastructure changes happening on the area. That is what determines whether it's a good exit or when is the right time to exit.
What is your outlook on the 2026 property market?
2026 property market currently looking stable because launches are still happening. Prices are being still set at a reasonable tone. Yes, there's a steady increase, and what matters right now is the public accept. They understand that this is how the prices are. This is becoming the new normal. Like 15 years ago, if you tell me a condo is $1 million, maybe a lot of us don't believe it. But now, if you tell me there's a condo below $1 million, nobody will believe it as well. So it's more of how people accept what's happening and they understand that this is what it is. And what as Singaporeans we tend to do is we understand and we try to make it happen. So if you ask me, yes, growth is still there. Property prices are steadily growing, but also very stable as of now. There's no sudden influx with property price from last year.
How have cooling measures really changed buyer behavior?
They are being implemented because there's a sudden influx of something. Okay, example, the sudden influx of private property buyers selling their houses and coming and right sizing to HDB. So when this happens, there's a surplus influx of resale private property in the market. So when this happens, okay, this situation happens, it causes property price to go down, and it makes lose their appreciation. So because of that, to us, like this cooling measure, the purpose of the cooling measure is to actually mitigate all these portions so that the market remains stable. There's no influx of buyers at any point of time or influx of sellers at any point of time, and is to stabilize the market, and it prevents any sudden outbursts of property price moving upwards or downwards.
Are buyers today overthinking or underestimating the market?
Okay, coming from a Kiasu perspective, right? Overthinking is a yes. Underestimating is also a yes. There are some buyers who feel that they need to wait for the price to drop, or market to stabilize, or they feel as though that at any point of time, this location, the prices will become better. Then there are also people who underestimate. They underestimate, thinking that when they buy in, they feel as though, yes, definitely their property price will increase. It will definitely appreciate, so they can sell it on a better market in the future. All these things are subjective to a lot of factors which affect the property itself. So yes, there are Kiasu buyers who are overthinking but missing the opportunities. And there are also people who underestimate but end up having a loss because they bought in at a higher price than their neighbors. So what matters to them is for them to understand, or sometimes they just need to ask for help. Some agents are not just there to buy or sell. They are there to actually share their knowledge, because what's important is, as an agent, is not just there to take the commission out of it. It's more important for us to educate or to help, because this is what brings or builds the client relationship for us as agents. You're not just an agent who wants to buy or sell, somebody who actually impart knowledge.
How should someone realistically set their property budget?
Factually, you get the bank, approval rate. I mean, you get what's the loan amount approval. So that is your baseline. From there, just when you decide what kind of property you want and what kind of property you need. So currently, in the market, they feel as though most buyers stretch their loan amount to maximize their loan. But that's not how it's supposed to be done. Because apart from buying the property, there's also another 4 years or 3 years you need to hold the property. For HDB, you need to hold it for 5 years. If you are in a plus or prime, you need to hold it for 10 years. If you are in a private property, even though there's no SSD, after 4 years, you still need to hold it for 4 years. So for a buyer, what's important is MAS allows TDSR of 55%. So MAS gives you 55% TDSR, and knowing your total debt, you can estimate how much loan you will get, and you can estimate whether this is something which you can hold for 4 years, for 5 years, so that is how you accurately budget for yourself.
Should you upgrade even if it means taking on a higher mortgage?
It depends. What matters is whether this upgrade makes sense. Whether are you able to hold, and does it appreciate for you to do this. What's important is that if you're able to hold the property value for the holding period of 4 years, or for HDB for 5 years or 10 years, then yes, it's good to upgrade, because upgrading always opens up options for you 5 years later, 10 years later.
If I'm going to buy a high price property, and so I will have to sell my property at a high price, is that a smart strategy?
All property owners, they want to maximize their profit appreciation. So definitely they want to sell high. That is the goal, right? So when you sell a property high, eventually the property market becomes higher in property asset value. So you buy is also going to be a expensive property. It's not going to be a cheaper property unless you are right sizing, or to bluntly say downgrading, for your golden years. So people sell high but eventually also buy high. But if you compare this whole sell high, buy high portion, you buy high because you know that eventually you can sell higher. And throughout the years of paying for the property, it's your forced savings. You are saving, which something which you are not saving in the bank, but it's more on the property value itself, which you know that when you sell your property and you right size in the future, you can always get it back as cash plus the appreciation. So if you're going to invest on your property, I rather have a 1.2 million property where I know that I'm forced to pay $4,000 every month, and I know I can afford this 4,000, and it's within my tolerable means to do so. So I invest in this property as my forced saving rather than a 800,000 property where I'm going to pay 2,000, and that's what I'm going to get back at the end when I sell this house. So is buying high a strategy? No, it's more of the forced saving portion is the strategy. But yes, any property which is reasonably high enough when you buy means there's also growth happening in the area, which might give you a better appreciation. If you buy a 800,000 property and it only appreciates 100k in 10 years, but if you buy a 1.2 million property and it appreciates 500,000 in the 10 years, is the 1.2 million a better investment? Surely, because your returns is much higher than the 800,000 property. So it's not about selling high or buying high. It's more of buying the right property which you feel or based on advice feels that it will appreciate.
For someone with a 1.5 million budget, how should they think about trade-offs when it comes to property?
It really depends on the individual. Okay, there's always the portion of size. There's always the location. There's also always the amenities around. So it depends on the individual and the family needs per se at the moment when they decide to purchase this house. So even if now you look at the market, 1.5 million, there might not be a lot of areas where you can look out for if you're going to buy a bigger property. So in that 1.5 million, you should understand what is the best value you can get out for yourself, for your family, or what is the end goal. Whether is it an investment or is it for your own stay, for a long-term stay. All these factors in when it comes to budgeting for yourself.
What's the number one financial mistake you have seen buyers make in 2026?
What I've seen so far is because of pressure, they feel that they can stretch their budget. But when they really get the property, holding is their biggest hurdle. Holding the property and, surviving monthly and surviving paycheck to paycheck becomes tiring for individual. They need to have a balance of what they want and also what they need and whether they can sustain. That's the most important portion or the biggest mistakes I've seen so far. Because there's a lot of clients who suddenly lose their job, but they don't have the background. They don't have that safe place to actually fall back on. And because of that, they had to, let go of their house, and lose it to the banks. So there's a lot of misconception on if I can afford it now, then it's okay. It's not supposed to be. You cannot enter any property having that mentality. You need to have a backup plan.
Can you share how your parents' situation shaped you as an agent?
I saw them go through this journey and I realized that there's a lot of things which they were not made known of, or a lot of misconceptions which they had, which they thought it's okay at a point of time when they bought their current property. So what happened to them was they bought an ideal property thinking that yes, this will appreciate. They stay there for 30 years and they can retire after right sizing from their current house. So to context, they are staying in a mansionette house. So my mom always have this dream that this house is going to be sold for $1 million. And recently when I talked to her and I told her that, this is far from what the current market is, she was taken aback. And when we did the calculation for them, after selling this house and buying another place, because as us kids, we are also living in tight spaces nowadays. So it's difficult to accommodate them. So for them to purchase another place and selling off their mansionette house, they are only left with 100,000 in cash profits. So when I told this to her, she was actually taken aback. She was thinking that how am I going to enjoy my retirement with just 100,000? Right now, all from what we don't understand is there's a retirement fund and there's a minimum cap in it. So after selling the house, whatever profit comes, it goes in and government will help you to give you a monthly payout. But for them, because they meet the minimum of it, they can't even cash out most of it. They have to keep it in their balance CPF. So this is something which they didn't account for. Apart from that, because they are of certain age, they cannot buy the house under CPF. They have to pay it full cash when they bought the house, the BTO place, their next house to stay in. So when all these things happen and she realized that, okay, I'm only down with 100,000 and my dad, who's been the sole breadwinner for the house, he's been putting a lot of effort for the past 30 years and he's just left with this. It's something to actually take a look at for us as adults growing up with our kids. Because there's a lesson to be learned here. Things which you might not see now, but that doesn't mean doesn't happen to you. Because in the future, it's too late to even think about it. Right now is the time to actually make the step forward. So to me, what I realize is that's the whole decision why I wanted to upgrade my property and from a HDB to a private is because I feel that I will get the appreciation I need, and also this is going to be the start for me so that I can make asset progression and planning and I leave something for my child. That was the end goal for me, and that's what I open up. And as an agent, what I want to do for my clients is to let them know that this is the hard truth, and sometimes them made known of this help them make a proper decisions or better decision. They can take better decisions to secure their golden years and also be as of help or don't be a burden to your kids in the future. So this is something which everybody needs to be made known of.
Why do you choose to help elderly with right sizing?
Learning from my parents, I believe that there's always a right time to right size. If you wait until the later portion of your life, then to right size, maybe it doesn't give out as much profits or proceeds for you. So right sizing is a decision which needs to be made when you feel that it's time to take a step back and relax. Yes, maybe you could have retired. Maybe you are still working, but more on a relaxed mode rather than, you're hounding every day to day. So for me, what I want is to let seniors understand, mainly elderly understand, that right now they have a retirement plan which they can actually, by selling their property now and right sizing now, they can have a better or comfortable golden years of retirement rather than holding on to their current property. And eventually, if it doesn't appreciate further, then it will start depreciating, because when property comes to a certain age, it will start to depreciate because there's no buyers looking at it. So for now, what matters is a lot of elders, they're just too fixated with staying at their own property because of comfort. They just like to stay and they wanted, to retire and, spend the rest of the years there. What they don't understand is even after they leave, it's something which is not going to help their kids. And if they are doing this for the 30 years of your life and you're holding on to something which is precious to you, but at the end of the day, it doesn't help the future generation, then it becomes less pointless to you, as a parent.
Every agent tell us to buy, but who should not buy now?
If you are financially not stable, if you think that in the next 5 years, a lot of things can change around you for your family dynamics wise, and also if you are not sure on what's your next plan to take, then you are not the person who's supposed to buy a property at this moment. What makes a buyer sure is clarity. You know your current situation. You know that the next 5 years you are well secured financially, and as your family, you also know that there is a plan or backup for them and everybody is in a stable condition. So when that happens, okay, that's when you can consider buying. Because when everything around you is stable, you will have the comfort to step ahead. It's what most buyers don't, they always underestimate this. They feel that as long as my loan is sufficient, I can buy. But what they don't expect is all the miscellaneous costs. They don't expect the sudden change in job. They don't expect, these things cannot be planned. But, sometimes there are signs. You just need to see and understand whether are you in a current stable condition, and also if you're going to upgrade or downgrade, you need to understand how it can help you or affect you. I think clarity is the most important thing here.
How do you identify if a property has real upside potential versus just hype only?
For me, I don't just look at show flat. Show flats is there, it's meant to give you a living condition point of view. And sometimes when buyers step in, they feel very comfort, or they feel as though that this is what it's supposed to be for show flat. But what you need to look at is infrastructure. You need to look at surroundings. You need to understand what's happening around the property which you are planning to buy. Okay, or even if it's not a new launch, if it's just a HDB, or if it's another market resale property, what you should know is what is the change which is happening around you. Buying a property, you need to have two clear options from there. One, you are buying a property because it's an investment, or two, you are buying a property because it's going to be your stay, your homestay. That's the house you're going to stay with your family. Once you are clear in this, that's when you can make a decision. Most buyers tend to buy a property as an investment, but after staying, they fell in love with the property and they want to keep it. So every investment property have an exit strategy. If you decide that this is going to be an investment property, then you should stick to timeline and exit when it's supposed to. Because if you don't, then it might not be the right move at the point in time. Or if you are there for your homestay, then you should not expect it to act like an investment property and appreciate for you. What you need to do is enjoy the time with the family there. So it really depends on what is the mindset when you want to purchase this property.
Do new developments nearby always push prices up, or can they sometimes actually backfire?
In my opinion, it's both. Okay, mainly because when there's too much development in the same area, there will be an influx in property. And when there's an influx in property, it becomes the buyer's market. Okay, buyer's market means now you have 3 different launches to choose from. Or if it's a HDB property, there's 30 units in the whole building, MOP building, which is up for sale. So there's a lot of options come. So when there is more units or more influx of property but less buyers, then it creates a situation where buyers can always negotiate price. There's always one property cheaper than the other one, which cause the whole market around that area to go down. So in the sense that developers, when they launch, okay, they have a set price because of the land price they buy, for their profits and also to their turnover. So this, when there's too much launch happening, okay, it might create a location where there's too much units there and very less buyers, causing the market to be very unstable, or just comes to a point where the buyers gets to choose what kind of property they want, and it doesn't really mean that eventually when they exit, that's when they sell, everybody else can sell as well. So when there's too much influx when they sell, so buying too much influx cause selling too much influx. So there's always a bad exit strategy at the end. So too much property at one point of time, or influx of property at one point of time, it might cause a tension of movement during the buying time, and also a tension of movement during the selling time.
Freehold versus leasehold, what actually makes more sense today?
It really depends on the buyers and what is their end goal. Leasehold is a 5 to 10 years property where you invest, appreciate, and you exit. Freehold is more of a long-term stay with at least 10 to 15 years of holding. Or if not, you just leave it for your future generation. So if you ask me, as of current market, a proper planned leasehold gives you a good appreciation in 5 to 10 years for you to exit, than a poorly planned freehold, which might be good in the long run, but it depends on how long is long.
EC versus private property, which one creates better long-term value?
For EC, there's a minimum MOP. There's also the building stage. So at any point of time, when the EC is being launched, Example, let's take it as 2020 it was launched. It takes about 3 years to 4 years to build, and you need to stay there for another 5 years. So the total number of years from the launch till you can actually sell MOP, the house, it's about 10 years. Whereas when it comes to private, there's no MOP. There's only SSD. So if you're going to sell the house within the first 4 years, there's a SSD percentage which you need to pay. But if your appreciation within that 4 years, within the 2 years, it's enough to cover the SSD. So in the end, you're not making any loss. So it really depends on what is the long-term goal. If I buy a private property, by the time my EC MOPs, I could buy twice and sell twice. So it depends on your understanding of outcome. Like, what do you want? Do you want to have a property where you can stay for 10 years with your family, or you want to get in and get out as an investment? So it depends on where is as a buyer, what do you want?
So what's the biggest misconception people have about property investing?
Everybody thinks that all properties will appreciate. But in fact, there are some that will not. Most of it does, because as a whole, Singapore's property market or property prices goes up. But there are some which actually depreciate rather than appreciate, especially houses which are much older, or condos which are actually bought at a height but being sold when the buyer exit, and it's not being sold as per the expected appreciation. So the biggest conception where buyers have is that every time I buy, I can always sell in a very high price, which sometimes, yes, it's true, but they also must be in a situation where to accept that, yes, this property is not appreciating, it's not making any money for them, and they need to exit as fast as possible. But it also means that if you don't want to sell it because it's not appreciating as much, then it depends on your holding capacity. So there's always a good option to strategize and understand which stage any property is, or which stage the area is. Like I mentioned, there's always 3 stages. There's always the announcement stage, then there's the infrastructure stage, there's a mature stage. So for me, I always advise my buyers to come in on the late announcement stage or the early infrastructure stage, because any property they buy, they need to hold it 5 years. Within the 5 years, if they are in the infrastructure stage, the areas will develop to be a mature stage. And mature stage is when people tend to exit this, because that's the best price the property can come up to, has already been appreciated because of the growth of the area itself.
Which are 3 undervalued areas for property in Singapore?
I don't really believe that there is a fixed top 3 areas, but because the market doesn't move like that. Okay, and it really depends on where the master plan is, what is the infrastructure changes happening, and Singapore is always upgrading when it comes to infrastructure, MRT lines, living state condition, parks and all that. So at any point of time, there's always upgrading happening in any area. But currently, focus on market fluctuation where it's happening is on the west side is Jurong Tengah area. There's a lot of movements with properties, with HDBs, with schools. There's a lot of infrastructure changes happening in Jurong and Tengah area. So for buyers who are considering, for investment, right now they are in the early announcement stage, and some portion of the BTOs are being fully built and also upgrade work happening. So that is a good time to invest. Within the next 5 to 10 years, it's good to exit. The other area is the Great Southern Waterfront, where they know that most of the port infrastructures are going to be shifted to Tuas. So, and this whole entire Southern Waterfront stretching from Pasir Panjang all the way up to Marina is going to open up for residential. So this is going to be a good place. But right now, they are in the very early announcement stage. So this will take about 10 to 15 years to actually fully mature. So if you ask me, Tengah, Jurong area, then Southern Waterfront, more centralized will be Thomson area with the Thomson downtown line coming. Okay, that is the next portion where it will grow. But Thomson houses are already pretty expensive at this moment. It will just become more expensive in the future.
You personally just moved into a condo as well. So why did you do that?
For me, is asset progression. As I mentioned, looking at my parents and for them when they exit and this is how much they are left with. Seeing that, that's when I realized that I don't want to be in the same situation. And that's the reason why, even though me and my wife, we are out of households which are long-term stayers, we made a difficult decision of selling our comfortable flat to a smaller flat right now, just so that we can understand we can at least see how much our asset progression will happen. For me, what matters is, or why this decision was made was for the future and for my kid. I think what's important is I don't want to be a burden for him in the future. And looking at how things are moving in Singapore, I want to be self-sustainable when I go to my golden years, and if possible, be a helpful father for my son when he needs any help with his property in the future. So I believe that moving to a private property at this time will help me have that asset progression. And that is my first step. And in the future, I'm expecting myself to shift another 2 more times. And that's the target plan to see what is the ultimate goal for me and my family. For me, it's about moving forward step by step, because that's how asset progression works. You need to take one small step at a time. So to me, it matters that as long as you are progressing, means it's one step forward rather than being stagnant, and it's not going to help you out in the future.
That's all the questions we have for today. Stay tuned for the next episode.